Antibiotics can be used different ways in the chicken industry. Some chicks can receive an in ovo or a subcutaneous injection at the day of at the hatchery. With the vaccine, they can incorporate an antibiotic. Most of the use comes in the feed because the chickens, in order to be protected against necrotic enteritis and coccidiosis, they need to have either an antibiotic or an anticoccidial in the feed. If your birds get sick, then you can have treatment in the feed if you wish, but it's faster to medicate the water, and then you can more quickly intervene to treat your birds. In Canada, we have 4 different categories for the antibiotics. Category 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they are classified according to their importance in human medicine. In the chicken industry, what we do is that we're using drugs that are mostly category 4, but also 3 and 2. And in the past months, there's been a policy from the chicken farmers of Canada and the Canadian poultry industry to stop the use of Category 1 as a preventive drug in the industry. Category 1 antibiotics are drugs that are very important in human medicine, and we find them also in agriculture under the names of XNL, it is a ceftiofur or cephalosporin, or the name of Baytril, which is a fluoroquinolone, and both are very important human medicines. Under category 2, you'll find drugs such as Stayfac, which is a virginomycin, Potpen, a penicillin, or Uniprim, which is a trimethoprim sulfa. Under category 3, then you'll find other drugs such as bacitracin or zinc bacitracin. You'll find tetracycline and other drugs like that. And finally, category 4 that are not used in human medicine, you'll find ionophores. Those anticoccidials have an antibiotic effect. And you'll find monensen, for example, is one of them. We call it Coban in the field. So these are drugs that are not used in human medicines and they are category 4. In order to preserve antibiotics as a tool for future use, for future generation, we need definitely to use them more responsibly. So for that, we need to know why we're using them and how to use them at the proper dose. For that, we also need the help and support of a veterinarian. We'll be able to diagnose the disease, know what are the purposes for which we're using the drug. Is that for prevention? Which diseases do you need to prevent, and at what dose and how you can use these. So these are all various ways that we have to address in making sure that we have a responsible use of the antibiotics. What we don't realize is that there are many antibiotics that are used in agriculture and they're the same in human medicine. I'll give you a few examples. For example, penicillin, tetracycline, these are drugs that are used in both cases. And unfortunately or sadly, E. coli, which is an important pathogen for the chicken industry, has become over the years resistant. Basically, it's no longer effective. Antibiotic resistance is a very complex phenomenon. You have on one side some bacteria that are naturally resistant to antibiotics. Others, they will develop the resistance when they're exposed to certain antibiotics. For example, if you have a bacteria that has in its genes a certain resistance factor, it will basically transmitted to its progeny, or it can also via various means, plasmid, transposon, etc., transmitted to a neighbor bacteria of another species. It's like you paying the cashier. This is how they will transmit genes in some examples. The effect that it has is that you have then a whole population of bacteria that has developed resistance to a certain antibiotic that they've been exposed to, and it will remain in the animal. Eventually, during processing, you can have later in the food chain exposure of the consumer to those resistant bacteria. On the other end, you can also have, as a farmer, and it's been shown in some studies that some food animal farmers being exposed to their animals and their bacteria, they can also harvest the same bacteria in the same resistance patterns than their animals. So this is how it can travel, and those bacteria, they can stay on the site, and then you can have a carryover from a flood to another one. So this is why it's a complex phenomenon. It's in the environment, it's in your animals, and it can be also in humans. This is why it's so important to use the antibiotics in a very responsible manner, so that we have a focused, targeted use. And also, it's very important to have a proper cleaning and disinfecting of your barns, because you don't want these bacteria to stay in place one flock after the other. CPARS, which is a national surveillance program, has shown the poultry industry that we do have two issues to address. That is resistance to ceftiofur, or XNL, and resistance of Campylobacter to fluoroquinolones, that is Baytril. So these are two drugs that we cannot afford using anymore at the preventive level, because that is too risky. Our research has shown that the use of ceftiofur, or XNL, at the hatchery has resulted in an increased resistance in E. coli in the chicks that had been treated. So there's a link here between use in agriculture and a potential problem in human medicine. And since we know how important those category 1 antimicrobials are to human medicine, they are used to treat life-threatening diseases, some respiratory diseases, for example, in pregnant women and children. And we cannot afford losing these, because then we're left with nothing. I'm so proud of the Canadian chicken industry for taking this major step to have decided not to use anymore the ceftiophorexanol at the hatchery. This is amazing. It's the first industry to my knowledge to have taken such a decision, and it will definitely have very positive impact on human health because this is a public health issue, as well as provide confidence in the consumers for the product. So it's a win-win situation. Farmers do have a very important role when it comes to responsible use of antibiotics. First, you need to ask questions, educate yourself. You have to know, and you should know, what's going in your chickens. If ever your chickens also are sick, then ask them for the help and support of a veterinarian. They are trained to diagnose the disease, and they know what antibiotics should be used and at what dose. Avoid the over-the-counter solution because this is a blanket use and use we don't want to see anymore. And if ever you want to investigate the possibilities of using alternatives, that is also something you can discuss with your veterinarian. But the most important role of the producer in preventing diseases is definitely in providing the animals an optimal environment, and that is done through optimal management. One way for the farmer to optimize its bird health and also get the most bang per buck is through a proper management of the breeding period. And we have to focus on two things during the breeding period: the bird comfort and easy access to feed. You want your chicks to be as comfortable as possible. You have to think heat, you have to think temperature of the litter, of the feed, of the whole environment. And then you want to make sure that your chickens, they will see the feed. Think lighting, think about the number of lux you have to deliver at the chick level. Think about also the amount of feed that you're putting on those paper rolls or in those cardboard boxes. You want your birds to eat as quickly as possible. Don't forget that you have Formula 1 chickens, and unfortunately over the years we have minimized our interventions at that level, and we probably should rethink that way of doing things. Crop filling also should be done 24 hours post-arrival. Check those crops to see if they're full. You're aiming for a 95% of crop fill to make sure that if you want to be happy with a good management period, this is how you would do it, and hopefully that will help you. On the other hand, if you have any questions, also talk to your representatives, because they also have different pieces of equipment that will help you to measure the temperature, look at the comfort zones, etc.